Ambassador Parthasarthi, as we all know, Mikhail Gorbachev, one of the iconic leaders of 20th century, died in Moscow after a serious and long illness. He is known to be one of the iconic leaders of 20th century who changed the course of history by triggering the collapse of Soviet Union. So how do you see his overall role in ending the Cold War between Russia and US?
Well, I think let's be quite clear. The collapse of the Soviet Union is seen by most people in Russia as a disaster, for which they hold Gorbachev responsible. But then Gorbachev, when he took over, made it clear that the system was weakening, that there is a need for democratization, and the problems followed. The fact is that the collapse of the Soviet Union was really a revolutionary change in the international situation, because the Soviet Union had a vast territory, vast natural resources, diversity, and had wielded power everywhere. The reality is that he is regarded as a person internationally who was committed to peace, that he wanted to end the Cold War competition with the West and with the United States particularly, and wanted an era of peace. Certainly, the sort of nuclear confrontation which prevailed at that point in time had the world concerned. There was concern about the stability, and there was certainly concern in many of the republics which wanted to move away. And Gorbachev set what was, in the views of many, a revolutionary process. But I think we should be conscious in also acknowledging that within Russia it was not well regarded. He had soon to leave office, and there was a period of instability before finally you got the Putin era.
Ambassador Parthasarthi, you rightly pointed out about his role in ending the Cold War between USSR and the US. As we know, Gorbachev was in power between 1985 and 1991, and he also helped bring US-Soviet relations out of a deep freeze. In a sense, his life was one of the most influential of his time, and his reforms transformed his country and allowed Eastern Europe to get out of Soviet. So, how do you see his overall contribution to peace and stability in the world?
It certainly led to a period of uncertainty, but the rivalry between the United States and NATO on the one hand, and the Soviet Union and the Warsaw Pact on the other, came to a close. And really in Europe, everyone was afraid of that. The second point is most of the countries of Eastern Europe, which were a part of the Warsaw Pact, really under rigid one-party rule, became democracies. So I think in many ways Gorbachev sort of brought in or ushered in the era of democracy across Europe.
Ambassador Parthasarthi, many experts, international experts, view his decision to withhold the Soviet army when the Berlin Wall fell a year earlier as a key to preserving the Cold War peace. So how do you see it?
I think, look, the Soviet army as it existed does not. The Russian portion of that, yes, you have a very formidable Russian army today. But then Russia was the center of the Warsaw Pact then, and today it remains the center of rivalry, as we are seeing now in Ukraine and elsewhere. So certainly that aspect to supposedly equal alliances between the Warsaw Pact and the NATO has ended, but the Cold War rivalries continue. You are now seeing, so long after Gorbachev's death, the tensions in Ukraine. And this rivalry really, unless it ends, and the feeling now in Russia, which is emerged from the Soviet Union as the centerpiece, that it is being surrounded by NATO, by forces which are out to still break it up further, that continues. So the tensions have changed. But yes, Gorbachev, I think, was a realist who felt that the cause of world peace would be better served if instead of holding all these countries, whether it was Poland or Hungary or elsewhere in Eastern Europe, instead of using them together by force, they went about their own ways. But that has in fact introduced a new era of rivalry between Russia on the one hand and an expanding NATO alliance on the other. So if you talk to most Russians, they very strongly feel that the breakup of the Soviet Union, the way it happened, needs to be carefully looked at, because right now, if you go across it more carefully, Russia still has problems of access to the sea, and the major reason for its quarrel with Ukraine is the concern that Ukraine would join with NATO, join with the United States to squeeze Russia's access to the warm sea waters of the southern part of the continent. And that is exactly the cause of the war today in Ukraine.
Ambassador Parthasarathi, Gorbachev was also a very strong proponent of Soviet-India ties during his tenure in power from 1985 to 1991. We have seen strong cooperation between the two countries. And he visited India twice, in fact, during his tenure. First, he visited India in 1986. And then he visited India in 1988. And during his first visit in 1986, he was accompanied by a 110-member delegation. It's a very large delegation. And he was quite clear that, in fact, Soviet Union wants to forge a very, very strong relationship with India. So how do you see his role in strengthening of India-USSR relationship?
Well, I was actually present in the negotiations that Gorbachev had with Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi in Moscow during Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi's visit. This is including the Soviet Union 1988-89. The talks were very warm with Mr. Gorbachev, and an interesting thing which emerged is, for the first time, we saw the readiness of the Soviet Union to cooperate with us on nuclear power, which was vital to us from our energy needs. And then you got the series of nuclear power agreements. In fact, this positive attitude of Gorbachev on nuclear power with us came in the wake of the United States being very hard and harsh on nuclear agreements. The United States unilaterally revoked the Tarapur Agreement, which required the supply of fuel for the Tarapur power plant. We could have got that from Russia. It was on offer to us, but we got it from France. But the Russian option was always there in nuclear power. In fact, it's the only power, even today, thanks to what Gorbachev got started at that point in time, with whom we have an agreement on this. Also, during his time, the defense relationship picked up. In fact, it increased. So, I think, looked at from the point of view of our national security, yes, we were concerned about the moves that Gorbachev made towards China. After all, during the 1971 conflict with Bangladesh, the Soviet Union backed us to the hilt, and they even warned China not to intervene. So to us also that was a geopolitical change which was happening. But in any case, many felt that was going to come in any event. So, as I said, his contribution towards strengthening our defense structure, more important in the economic field, and on disarmament. He was one with India on disarmament, on total nuclear disarmament, and we did work on him at that period. There was our own plan in 1988 in the UN, which we presented for total nuclear disarmament on a nuclear weapons-free world. So yes, they were very closely involved in our larger strategic thinking. They were always ready to cooperate with us in expanding industrial cooperation. But they themselves by that time were running into trouble domestically, economically. And Gorbachev felt that one-party system, the communist system, was no longer sustainable in Russia.
Thank you so very much, Ambassador Parthasarathi, for your detailed perspective about Gorbachev's overall contribution to global peace and stability. Thank you so much.